Good evening, sir. I am Shri from Electrical Engineering. My question is, we have talked a lot about the Western stamp on the education that we undergo through. So, what are some of the very significant measures that you suggest, particularly in liberal arts studies and history, that can bring about a change? I mean, in the Indic way.
So you see, the problem with the national education policy is that it encourages liberal arts without having built an Indian approach to liberal arts. So there's a vacuum, and if we have not developed the Indian approach to liberal arts, and we just want liberal arts of any kind, then by default the Harvard liberal arts are coming. This is what is the problem. Okay, so the people who built the NEP should have developed theories, firstly more Indian history from the Indian's point of view, Indian social thought, in the Dharma Shastras, Arth Shastras, Mahabharata has got social thought, so much debate, so many arguments, Ramayana has. So, you know, if you look at all these debates about different communities and jatis and fighting this and that, arguments have, so much of this has happened, and there's hardly a new argument there about justice and all that, which hasn't happened in our own. So our own approach, using our own texts to study the what is called liberal arts, should have been done. They should have taken 10 universities and given each of them the 5-year project with enough funding that, okay, you start the Indian approach to liberal arts, and then we'll evaluate and pick the best ones and turn it into the national curriculum. Then we can have the NEP bring liberal arts. They should have done that first. See, China has liberal arts of their own kind, from their own approach. You know, France is kicking out the American liberal arts because they're saying this wokeism is bad for our country. See, I mean, any of you know what is the French President Macron's position against wokeism and against all this these new kind of trends to rabble-rouse the minorities in France against the country? Do you know, any of you, do you know what is his view on this? Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. His view is that the French Revolution created this whole theory of rights. But these rights are individual rights. They are not rights of a community. They are rights of an individual. So he says in France, you can't say Muslims need this. You can say you as an individual, if you have been denied individual rights, we'll make sure you get your individual rights. But there is no such thing as rights of that community, because you are then destroying France, because France stands for individual rights of all people, regardless of, you can have a privately practice any religion, we're not stopping you. But you will not get public rights from the state based on your identity, because that encourages vote banks, it encourages group collective bargaining, and it will break up the country. So he's very smart, very smart. So the education minister in France has banned all these kind of liberal arts from US. They were, of course, don't have them in China. Singapore has discontinued a collaboration with Yale, which was on this kind of topic. They've discontinued because they said it is against our country's interest. Putin has spoken openly against this wokeism disease coming to his country. Japan has a pushback against these kind of things being brought into Japan. Israel has fought back. So you see, many countries are fighting back and saying we don't want to dismantle our sense of pride and nationalism and patriotism and our traditional structures and family structures. We don't want this. India, it's a free-for-all. India, there's nobody understands the problem. So the reason we're writing this book is, as more people read it, as more people talk about it, it will put pressure, whether it is on the billionaires, whether it is on the very rich IIT alumni to do something, or whether it is on the government. It is for the young people to use this and create some pressure. So we want your help. So that is why we are saying, support this, and we will work with you, because your voice matters, and we can give you the intellectual ammunition, we can give you the scholarship. We would love to do a Swadeshi Indology conference on this book in next year. We're coming back in February, and we'll probably do a conference somewhere on that.
Just to add on what Singapore is doing, see, if we don't know what liberal arts is, we can at least look at what some of the other countries are doing. So in 2014, Yale University had an MOU with Singapore, NUS, for a 10-year MOU. So very smart. So they just don't have an open MOU. They say, okay, we'll evaluate it for 10 years. So after 10 years, so essentially what the straw that broke the camel's back was a course that Yale taught in Singapore called Resistance and Dissent in Singapore Society. And that just, the education minister just flipped when he just heard the title of this course. Because he said, what has that got to do in Singapore? Singapore cultural context has no place for these kinds of courses. And he went to the parliament and he said, this kind of thing does not suit our ethos. And then they decided that they made up some lame excuse for PR purposes, saying that we haven't got the endowment funding that we had projected and we need to essentially close the deal. And Yale University was considered so prestigious, and Yale lost the deal with Singapore. And people they just take the bull by the horn. They made sure the last group graduated, and that's it. There's no more Yale NUS program. So lots of people, they look at what the content is and decide that this doesn't suit our country or our culture, because Singapore said we have different races and we have different languages, and they've all been working they said, what nonsense is this Chinese patriarchy in Singapore? And we've been living in harmony for many, many years, decades and hundreds of years, so we're not going to do this. And they cancel them. I think it takes and some of them are actually people of Indian origin, who make such comments. But Indians in India, unfortunately, don't take that stand. We're all very proud that we are having these alliances with foreign universities. In fact, just to add to Rajiv's point also, China studies, China's not only got its own narrative, control of its own narrative, but also bringing that narrative into India through Ashoka University's China Studies Department. So that's kind of the pipeline to bring in China Studies into India. And then they have Jadavpur University, Christ College in Bangalore, Somaya College. So they take students and scholars from these universities, and then they have a pipeline through Harvard into Harvard Yenching University and train Indian students and scholars on how China studies should be done in India. That's how smart they are.